Welcome, everyone. We are glad that you're interested in Plum Island and you've come out of the heat to join us today for a webinar presentation called Preserving Plum Island for Future Generations. So thank you. And we know there are some folks from both New York and Connecticut who are on this. So we're going to start right off by going to Plum Island. Plum Island is located in the Eastern Sound, right at the nexus of where Long Island Sound meets Peconic Bay. And it's a really important, both of the estuaries are national important estuaries. And Plum Island, as you can see, it has this pork chop shape. It is 840 acres. It is about 3 miles long. It has 9 miles of beach around it. It is within the town of Southold, New York. It is managed by the Department of Homeland Security. It is owned by the federal government, and our nation's animal disease center, a foreign animal disease center where they study foreign animal diseases that could hurt our livestock, is located there. What's really important here to know is that since World War II, over the past 70 plus years, 80% of the island has essentially become a de facto refuge for some of our most imperiled species. And so we are in a fight to protect Plum Island, and I'll get into that a little bit later. And Save the Sound manages and leads the Preserve Plum Island Coalition, which is a coalition now of 110 organizations in New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and beyond. We also steer much of the policy work that we're doing, and we lead the legal battle to try to save Plum Island. Let me go back and introduce myself. My name is Cryder. I'm Land Campaign Manager for Save the Sound. And Louise, you want to introduce yourself? Oh. All right. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
I'll just go ahead.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
So at this time, I'm Cryder again, Land Campaign Manager, and we have with us in New York, Louise Harrison, who is my colleague, equal out on Long Island. She's the New York Natural Areas person, and both of us together do outreach around Plum Island. So let's go ahead, and we're going to give you a short little background tour and then get into what we're doing at the moment to try to save Plum Island. It's not moving forward for some reason. Okay. So this is a picture of the southern end of Plum Island. This is where the area that I had mentioned earlier, that 80% of the island has essentially become a de facto refuge over the years. And you can see there's been very little human disturbance on a majority portion of the island. And this is where most of the island's dunes are. There is freshwater wetlands in the interior of the island that are used by many waterfowl, and it's an important stopping point in the Atlantic flyway for many species of birds. And on the southern side of the island are huge, huge bluffs, maritime bluffs, upwards of 80 feet high in some points, that look out over Peconic Bay. It's just an extraordinary view. And beneath those bluffs is a large seal colony, up to 600, one of the largest in southern New England. Most importantly, it is really a birder's paradise. And birds will stop, as I mentioned before, in the Atlantic Flyway. There have been now identified 224 birds. That's about 1/4 of all the birds that are in the United States will use Plum Island or call it home. And you can see there are 57 at-risk species. Also around the island are endangered right whales, as well as this creature, are Earth's largest sea turtle, the leatherback, that is often seen around the island. In addition to its environmental treasures, we have got both historical and cultural resources. Here is the Plum Island Lighthouse that was built in 1869. Also on the island are remnants and buildings, some of them in good shape, some of them in not so good shape, as well as artillery batteries from the historic Fort Terry that was built in 1897. So we have people who are interested not only in the ecological resources, but people who would like to see the historical resources preserved as well. And back to our nation's Foreign Animal Disease Center. This is the Plum Island Animal Disease Center, which takes up a pretty small footprint on the island. 400 employees work there every day. 200 leave Connecticut at Old Saybrook to come here. Another 200 from Orient Point. It's a very important job creation place for these 400 employees. And it's here that the scientists and veterinarians and other workers work to find vaccines for foreign animal diseases. The disease that they study most is foot and mouth disease, but they study other diseases as well. However, very shortly in 2022, at the end of 2022, the Plum Island Animal Disease Center is to close and move to the new National Bio and Agro-Defense Facility in Manhattan, Kansas. Plum Island Disease Center will close down. Interestingly enough, most of the employees there don't want to move to Kansas, but it will move its operations to Kansas. And then, because of a law passed in 2009 by Congress, the island currently is to be put up for sale at auction to the highest bidder. And the island is at threat of losing its just fantastic habitats, as well as the wildlife that's on the island. And just to let you know, there's been identified 111 at-risk species on Plum Island. So there was the law passed in 2009 by Congress to sell the island. Unfortunately, and what's the real injustice here, is that that law bypassed the normal process for disposing of an island or disposing of surplus government property. When the government has surplus property, under the normal process, it is to first be offered to sister agencies, let's say like the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, who at one time was very interested including Plum Island in its National Wildlife Refuge System. And then it's offered to states. If there's not a federal sister agency, then it's offered to municipalities and counties, and then finally non-governmental organizations and conservation. But because of this law, it was bypassed that normal process. And we're fighting then to stop this process of putting the island up to the highest bidder at public auction. So there are developers interested in Plum Island. There is one proposal to develop upwards of 2 golf courses on Plum Island, which we believe would damage the habitats on the island for the wildlife, the flora and fauna on the island, as well as a resort of some sort. We, of course, don't think that's the highest and best use for Plum Island. We do think that the best use for the island is to conserve 80% of the island that has become a de facto refuge and adaptively reuse the Animal Disease Center so that we can keep those 400 jobs. So now we're going to get into what we're doing today. And we started a little bit late today at about 12:48 or so. So we're going to run a little bit past 1 o'clock here. But we're working with our congressionals, both in the Senate and the House, in New York and Connecticut and beyond, to repeal the law that started the sales process. And you're seeing on your screen here Congressman Lee Zeldin, who's in New York, where Plum Island he is in the district where Plum Island is, and we have Senator Gillibrand and Schumer from New York, Congressman Courtney, as well as Senators Murphy and Blumenthal in Connecticut. And these individuals have submitted numerous legislation over the years, all the way back to 2013 and forward, including this year. This year, there are 5 bills in Congress that would help protect Plum Island. And Congressman Zeldin has built a bipartisan coalition of those in the House in multiple states, and that's a very good thing. There are a number of bills that we expect will pass the House, but so far, historically, none of these bills have reached the Senate floor. And unfortunately, we believe that these bills are being blocked by certain Midwestern senators who would still like to see Plum Island sold and believe that there still may be significant money from a sale of Plum Island, and we can talk about that later. But we're thankful for our legislators. They're working hard, and actually this year is probably one of the best years. We think we have one of the best chances to get a bill passed. So Louise, you want to take over from here?
Hi, everybody. It's Louise Harrison from Long Island. You know, in addition to staying in close touch with our senators and congressmen by phone conversations and letters, it's important to have some FaceTime too. So we've been going down to Washington in the fall. We went in 2017 and again last fall, hitching a ride with the Long Island Sound Studies Citizens Advisory Committee group. And so members of the Preserve Plum Island Coalition, which formed, I guess, in about 2013 and is now up to 109 member organizations, representatives of that coalition and from Save the Sound as well, we went to Washington to support the various bills that are in Congress and to try to get some movement. And we've had some really good meetings, both with the legislators and their staffers. You know, in 2017, we met with some key staff members of committee where in the Senate, a key bill has been held up. And we came away with some instructions. They gave us some very good, clear instructions and some good information. They pointed out that the federal government really doesn't want to hold on to property that doesn't have a clear purpose. So selling Plum Island is something that seems logical to them if there's no future plan for it. And they gave us an assignment, so to speak, and said, if you really want to save Plum Island, you really should go to work and figure out exactly what you want for the island and come up with a plan to transfer it to an entity that will carry out your plan. So we got to work, and we developed a program with the Nature Conservancy called Envision Plum Island. We've hired a consulting firm called Marcel Day that is very well versed and has a lot of experience in the process of moving properties that are held by federal entities into conservation status. And of course, that's exactly what we want. So this consulting firm has been giving us some guidance. And after this process, we're in about a year and a half coming up later this fall, we're going to have a transfer and reuse plan that we can share with the public and with government entities. Part of the plan involves getting together with stakeholders such as yourselves, and we've had 3 primary meetings planned. The third one is coming up. One was last fall with a wide array of people in government, in historic societies, environmental protection groups, various agencies, elected officials, Native American groups. We had about 55 people show up in November to learn about how the federal government normally disposes of property, get some guidance on what we could possibly do here, and give us ideas of what people would like to see. And more importantly, we got some more marching orders. We got some questions from this group that have set us onto a research path. We followed up in the spring at the Long Island Natural History Conference. Can we have the next slide? That was held at Brookhaven National Laboratory. Here you see Chris Cryder leading a discussion. We had 55 scientists and naturalists show up, mostly Long Island based, but not exclusively. And we got some really important feedback from these individuals. Some of them are world renowned. You can see Carl Safina there. The second one from the right is a well-known, world-renowned author on the subject of conservation. We got some really good feedback and advice from these folks about what we could do with the eastern end of Plum Island and how to protect it going forward. We have one more session coming up in the fall, and we'll be meeting with people who have, in particular, historic and cultural resources on their minds. And then we'll be developing our plan.
Louise, do you want to show the video now?
I think that I should show you all. That would be great. This is a video we've shown at both sessions. We'll show again in the on September 26th. It's a little tongue-in-cheek in the beginning, and I hope you enjoy it and see the humor in it. Let's go.
Plum Island was ours, and it still is ours, and we're still here.
Okay, now, from the beginning.
I wish Plum Island was able to keep its natural habitat.
I wish Plum Island was a place where veterans could take their neighbors and their friends.
A Native American museum.
Some hotel, a marina.
I think maybe a world-renowned artist colony.
The island is of national park quality.
As someone who is used to putting together deals, trying to make something happen, to me, a more realistic approach would be a public-private partnership of some kind.
I think we should also consider keeping the federal government involved in protecting, after all, two national estuaries whose waters wash on each side of the island.
There are probably children on Long Island that don't even realize that they live on an island, so to be able to take them to a smaller island like Robbins Island or Plum Island, where they can learn the unique ecosystems of that island, would be ideal.
The most important question is, what is the vision of the coalition as to how the island would be used and how it will be managed in the future? I think once you have that vision, then you can go out to potential donors.
We have to come together on this because the Native Americans want to participate in this whole process of saving the island, because it's saving our heritage and culture.
The science labs could be recycled. It may be appropriate to establish a university research program in the realm of universities from New England and New York.
But they could generate money and jobs through economic tourism and through heritage and cultural tourism.
You can have both things. You can have sustainable development, you can have sustainable tourist activities going on in a way that's not harmful to the environment.
No, I just see a whole big future for Plum Island.
Okay, well, we hope you liked that video. And Louise, we're back onto you. I'm going to take you to the next slide here. Whoops. Hold on a second. Okay, Louise, you're up. We got you unmuted now.
Okay, well, you can see that website again, that video again on our website, preserveplumisland.org, and it'll be a little less choppy. But in the meantime, we hope you enjoyed it. And the reason you're seeing this happy face of the New York governor is that we're hoping New York will be the champion and step up and find a way to accept Plum Island into its guardianship. It would be wonderful if it was a state park or some type of a state preserve or a combination thereof, or as you heard in the video, some kind of public-private partnership with conservation as the goal. So we are working with various state agencies and have been talking with the governor's staff and really hope that he can step up and make a difference. Just this spring, the chairs of the conservation committees in the New York State Legislature, Assemblyman Steve Engelbright and Senator Todd Kaminsky, wrote a letter, joint letter to the governor asking him for his involvement. And another piece of news from this spring. Do we have the next slide? Oh, sorry, I'll go back to that, but Chris has something to say.
Just quickly, I'm going to say that, as I mentioned earlier, we lead the legal battle for Plum Island. And in 2016, we sued the Department of Homeland Security and the General Services Administration, for really producing what's called a very poor environmental impact statement. They're to consider a conservation alternative. They did not. They were to ask for the advice from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service about how to manage endangered species. Once the island moves to the private realm, they did not consult the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They also are to do an extensive study of potential contamination on the island, and we believe there were major gaps in that. So we did file suit. It is currently stayed while the government pursues doing a supplemental environmental impact statement, which they hope will cure the major deficiencies that were in the first one. We'll wait and see, but so far we're told that they still are not interested in a conservation alternative. So our lawsuit is still active, but is stayed for the moment. And here, Louise, we'll move on to the seals.
Sure. Well, going back to New York State, there is a piece of legislation we're hoping for the governor to sign, and I think there's a good chance he will, because it was unanimous vote in the Assembly and the Senate this spring to pass a marine mammal and sea turtle protection area bill, and it creates a boundary in the waters, New York State waters, around Plum Island, Great Gull Island, and Little Gull Island, within which would be a protective zone for these animals, and for which a committee would be assembled of experts, scientists, and agency people to advise the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation on protection measures and regulations. It does not affect fishing in any way. It's not intended to. But it does call attention to the critically important resources around Plum Island, and we hope will continue to point out all the best reasons we have for wanting to keep Plum Island in a protective status. So we would love it if people listening today would contact the governor and support signing this bill. And also, if you go to the preserveplumisland.org website, which you can see the address there, you will find a button you can push, and you can contact your legislators in Washington for the various bills that are in play there as well. Please explore preserveplumisland.org. There's lots of resources there for you to take a look at. And we think that we have more uses for that website in the future, but I think you'll find it very interesting. You could be in an organization perhaps that would like to join, and all you need to do is agree with our mission statement that you see right here, and there's a link on the members page that you can click and fill out a form, and we'll sign you up as a member too. We have over 109 organizations in Preserve Plum Island Coalition now. So hope you'll take a look at that. And clearly, if you have any questions, we're open to hearing them today, but you can always contact me at lharrison@savethesound.org or Chris Cryder at ccryder@savethesound.org. Here are some of our members that you can see. So there's our contact information, and I think we'll open it up to questions. You can use your chat function for that. So if you haven't done chat before, you can see there's a little balloon at the bottom of your page that says chat. You can click on that, you can type in a question, and our colleague Anthony will announce your question, and Chris and I will do the best we can to answer them. Any comments?
A question. I'll just mention on the Save Plum Island web page at preserveplumisland.org. You'll see at the top a button that says click to tell your U.S. representatives to save Plum Island now. There is a real opportunity this fall for the Senate to take up legislation that would repeal the original law passed in 2009 that started the process by the federal government of selling the island at auction. And we are gaining momentum. There are more congressionals that are co-sponsoring the legislation. We're trying to get others in New England, other senators particularly, to join the bills as well. So anything that you can do to help us, take action, talk about Plum Island with your friends. And if you have any questions, again, please contact Chris Cryder or Louise Harrison at those email addresses. You can also type in a question now in your Zoom chat box. All right. Well, we don't have any questions from you. If you think of any more afterwards, please shoot us a email. And thank you so much for your interest in protecting Plum Island. Have a great day.